You're listening to a podcast of The Gary Doyle Show. Heard weekdays from noon till 3 on All News Radio, 570 News.
Well, we're back again, and we just had an hour with Rob Leone, the PC candidate, and I have now the NDP contingent in the office here with me, the studio, pardon me. I think I'm back at City Hall. I'm not. We have Atinuke Bankole, who's the NDP candidate. Welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
And we have Scott Piatowski, who's the vice president of the provincial NDP. And welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have both of you here. And on this, this day in which we're talking about just the different issues, both provincially and locally. I'd like to get into both aspects, if I may, in terms of the policies of the NDP locally and how they're going to, affect us, make the community better if you do get elected. But first of all, Atinuke, I want to go back a bit. And I remember seeing you in the municipal campaigns. I thought you handled yourself extremely well in the debates. I thought you came across well. But more importantly, I thought you worked very, very hard across the city. So I think, having you here in the studio today is going to be certainly interesting, and I think a new perspective that we could have enjoyed maybe at the regional council level, but we didn't get it. But we're going to have you here. And Scott, you were a municipal candidate at one point, am I correct?
I was, yes, and I've run federally for the NDP previously
for the NDP.
as well.
All right. But so we're lucky to have both of you here today. Atinuke, give us a little bit about your background. Who are you? What's Atinuke all about? Did you go to school here? Those kind of things that people like to know about you.
Yeah, I really love calling Cambridge home. I think it's the best community in Southern Ontario.
That is better than Kitchener and Waterloo?
Absolutely. It's on top there.
Yeah,
above.
I'm outnumbered here. So,
Scott, you be quiet. Go ahead. Atinuke, I like
above both of them. And so really love being a resident of Cambridge. I love teaching in Cambridge. Cambridge students are the best also.
What do you teach?
I teach currently grade 2.
Okay.
And really enjoying that because, the children at that age are so young and impressionable and they love school, thankfully. And so as a teacher, you have a lot of opportunity to infuse them with knowledge and, even more love for education. So I'm a teacher. In the past, I was the founder of Bankole English Services, and I was creating individualized language programs for university students. I found that was a good introduction to the small business world for me. And later, as I moved from there to becoming a teacher, just that whole interest in our youth, interest in our community, interest in having a vibrant community continues with me. And so as a teacher, and currently I sit on our city's Arts and Culture Committee.
Okay.
And there I'm advocating for the artists in our community to help them to be even more successful.
All right, Scott, what about you now? You get just a little bit of background. I really want to focus on Atinuke today, but just,
Well, and I would like to focus on her as well,
Yeah.
because obviously we're quite excited to have great candidates like Atinuke and the other candidates in the region. But to answer your question, I've been involved in the NDP for over 25 years now. Joined as a teenager and have stayed involved. Ran federally twice. And then subsequently have just stayed involved behind the scenes,
right? Okay.
And recruiting people like Atinuke to run.
Okay, the NDP in this upcoming election, Atinuke, what are the issues that really put you apart from the other two parties?
It's really keeping it positive and keeping the needs of everyday Cambridge residents central. I think that's unfortunate that we don't have that normally in politics. And as I go door to door, I find that residents are tired of the back and forth, the negativity. They're tired of always getting lost in the shuffle. They're tired of promises that really end up being empty. People talk about affordability issues, the HST and the burdens that it's causing them. They talk about the expansion of the hospital and why after 10 years we're still waiting for it to be there in physical form. They talk about jobs and the fact that so many in their family or in their neighborhoods are underemployed or unemployed. Just coming here today, I met a gentleman whose partner had her work at Cambridge Meat Packers cut. She lost her job because that facility is closing down. And in Cambridge, unfortunately, that story is all too common. we need to make sure that we're bringing jobs back into the community. And that's why I'm really excited to be running, because I think we have a tremendous opportunity with this election to get back a strong voice for Cambridge, to get back an active voice for Cambridge at Queen's Park, one that brings in jobs as opposed to having us lose services to Kitchener and elsewhere.
Okay. I just want to remind our listeners that if you have any questions for Atinuke, we have a hands-free star 570 or 519-570-2545 or toll-free 1-800-570-5715. And we're looking forward to hearing from you, any questions you may have. Atinuke, you talk about jobs. What is your party specifically going to do to bring jobs into this region, into this community of Cambridge that you wish to represent?
Well, making sure, first of all, that we stop losing the slow leaking out, like bleeding of jobs that we've had. So losing our courthouse is such a loss to us. And it's unfortunate that it's something that's happened under the current watch of our representative, our provincial elected representative. Also, making the fact that we won't get the GO train or get the even LRT also means that we won't be getting needed jobs that could be coming here. So making sure that we stop that bleeding is the first step. And then beyond that, it's making sure that we're rewarding companies that are creating jobs as opposed to giving tax.
How are you going to reward them?
Well, we know that the green economy is the economy of the future. And we know that Guelph, for instance, is having a lot of success, is getting green technology companies to locate there. Kitchener is increasingly also getting a lot of success. So in Cambridge, it's an area that we can focus on. So rewarding those kinds of companies that are creating solar panels, manufacturing solar panels, and so on, means that we modify the microfit program to be so that it's on the side of small businesses, not outrightly kill the microfit program, which is what our incumbent would want us to do, or their party would want us to do. That would kill jobs. That would prevent us from having jobs of the future. So rewarding green technology companies would be one, and to do that, we would modify the Green Energy Act.
In which way, like specifically?
So that it's emphasizing and it's encouraging small business producers of solar panels, for instance, community centers who want to put solar panels on. It's rewarding them and assisting them to do so, as opposed to maybe the Samsung deal that the McGuinty government brought in, which then shifts our tax money or our natural resources overseas to an offshore company.
Would the NDP scrap that agreement with Samsung?
Unfortunately, it's not transparent, right? Okay. We don't know all the ins and outs of it, but as much as is possible, we absolutely would not want agreement like that. If it's set in stone, we would have to honor it, but if it's not, absolutely we would want to get out of it.
Scott, what do you think?
Well, I think it's important that any party running for office not make promises that they might not be able to keep. So when Dalton McGuinty was elected, he said he was going to tear up the 407 agreement. Of course, not only did he not tear it up, but the tolls on the 407 have gone way, way up. And so we don't want to promise that we'll tear it up, but we want to examine the deal, see what's hidden, and see if we can get a better deal for taxpayers. And for months, actually, the Liberals have been criticizing the NDP for calling for an examination of the Samsung deal, when just last month they themselves renegotiated it. So clearly they saw that there were some problems with it, and they are moving to quell that criticism by making those changes. And obviously their criticism that it couldn't be looked at, that you were anti-environmental if you questioned their agreement with Samsung. Those claims were ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, we just had Rob Leone on, and I found it interesting. The same sort of stand, no promises. This is what I'm hearing. What are we getting? Just strong advocates, or commitment to see good things happen? I mean, how do you sort of stage who you are, what your party is all about? I mean, what am I to expect when I go into the ballot box, when I try to make a choice, and everyone's saying to me, well, we're not making a commitment, we're not making a promise. What are you doing?
I think what you can expect from the New Democrats is a strong, unwavering commitment to working families, to workers, to small businesses. That doesn't change.
Okay.
We are saying very clear things. For instance, we would give a 10% tax break for companies that are investing in buildings, in equipment, in manufacturing. Those are the kinds of companies that are creating jobs in Cambridge. We want to give them tax credit, not just give across-the-board tax cuts like the HUDA conservatives are doing to banks and insurance corporations that are already profitable but not creating jobs. So what you can expect is a new Democrat government that's on the side of workers, on the side of families, on the side of everyday people in Cambridge.
Okay, that's what we can expect. I'm going to come back to this. We're going to do a bit of a short break. I want to come back to the hospital. I want to come back to the GO train and its impact or lack of impact on Cambridge and what we could expect in the future from the NDP. Well, we're back in the studio, and I've got Atinuke Bankole, who is the NDP candidate in Cambridge, and Scott Piatowski, Vice President of the provincial NDP, with us. And we've been talking about a number of issues, and I find it really interesting. You know, it's kind of a fresh approach I've heard from both the candidates, both from Rob Leone and yourself, about how you're going about the campaign and this whole thing about commitments as opposed to promises. The NDP in Ontario, what are you expecting in this election with regards to the poll numbers you've seen? You've seen them out there. Does that concern you?
Oh, no, absolutely. To the contrary, I'm very encouraged. I mean, we are in this election to win it.
Okay.
We are in this election because we have a very strong choice. We're creating a strong option for Ontario voters. In Cambridge, we're strong about putting everyday people first. We're bringing a change that puts people first. And we're very confident in this election. Cambridge
Hospital, what's your position? There has been an announcement by the Minister, Deb Matthews, that in fact Cambridge Hospital is going ahead. Is it going ahead if the NDP get into office, or have that balance of power if it's a minority government? What am I going to see with the Cambridge Hospital?
You know, Andrea Horwath, our leader, was here in November 2009, and she was right at Cambridge Hospital and said, why are we still waiting for that expansion? That was in 2009. 2010 went by, now we're in 2011, and we had Miss Deb Matthews come, and she made that splashy announcement, but I think it would have been better if she had been there to open the expansion, to open the expanded facility, as opposed to make another announcement.
Well, I promised her the cement truck if we have a groundbreaking ceremony to make sure we get the foundation in anyways. And, of course, there's the whole issue of transportation. And I think, you know, as a mayor of a community, and I look and having traveled around the world, and you see in other parts of the world, I feel Ontario is being left behind. And I'm not taking sides in this election, but in terms of transportation, we see high-speed trains, monorails, other communities around the world. And in Cambridge, we're waiting for a GO train that is about 20 kilometers away from Milton and a direct line to Union Station. What are the NDP's plans for Ontario with regards to the 400 series highways, with regards to GO trains, or the possibility of actual high-speed trains?
Mm-hmm. What we want to see and what we've always worked hard towards is a master plan, a master transportation plan for Ontario, one that weaves into different regions and not just, you know, gives you good transportation in one area but then leaves you short if you wanted to go outside of that to get somewhere else. So what you just talked about is really a master transportation plan for all of Ontario. We've always been strong on that. Our leader, Andrea Horwath, has always spoken to the benefits that would bring us in terms of workers needing to get to employment, in terms of businesses wanting to relocate. That would make us that much more attractive to them. So in terms of Cambridge, it's very sad that the GO train is bypassing us. You know, we're the most direct route to Toronto, yet we're being bypassed by it. And it really shows how we need a strong voice in Cambridge, how we need a change that puts everyday taxpayers whose money is going to the GO train, that will be going to Kitchener, but not them in Cambridge. We need to be putting those taxpayers first.
So you're not taking the GO train out of Kitchener now. We're going to have two GO trains, is what we're saying.
Well, you know, whatever we do, we need to make sure that Cambridge is serviced. And as Cambridge's member of provincial parliament, I would fight hard for that, and would not be sitting on my hands and allowing what's going on currently to go on.
Okay, one of the interesting things, and maybe Scott, I'm going to get you involved in this one. You know, I asked the last candidate, Rob Leone, about attack ads. Okay, we saw attack ads with regards to the both the Liberals and the PCs going at each other on the news media. Of course, Rob said they're contrast ads, they're not attack ads. And I noticed the NDP has taken a position we shouldn't have these kind of ads. Can you kind of elaborate on all of this for us?
Yes, we have. You won't see any attack ads from the NDP in this campaign. We've taken a conscious choice to take the high road and highlight differences, certainly, but do so in a positive manner. We have a website, stopthesmears.ca, which counters some of the negative attacks that have been leveled against the NDP and explains why they're not valid attacks. Andrea Horwath just last week at the Rotary Club in Toronto actually called for a similar system that they have in the U.S. where party leaders would have to take responsibility for ads. So there would be a recorded announcement at the end of each ad indicating that they had approved it. So they couldn't say, "Oh, that ad making fun of Jean Chrétien's face, I never approved that," or they couldn't say.
That's the famous one.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the worst.
Or the notorious one. Pardon me.
Yes, and so I think that all those ads do is to drive people away from the political process, and as ads have become more and more negative, voter turnout has gone down. I was actually reviewing the Liberals' platform from 2003, and it was a nice nostalgic walk through what they promised. And one of the things that they said was that they were going to increase voter turnout by 10%, and in fact, it has gone down.
Okay, we have Jim from Waterloo. Jim, go ahead. You got a question and an update, please.
Yes, I do. Seeing how it came up when Rob Leone was on, he was asked what's so different between Tim Hudak and Mike Harris. I'd like to ask the question, what makes today's NDP so different than the good old Bob Rae days, which, let's face it, were less than stellar?
You know, you should be on the program being the host. That was my next question. Well done. Go ahead. And an update, please. How are you different? Okay.
Our leader, Andrea Horwath, is someone who rose through the ranks through community service. She was a community organizer in Hamilton, went on, became a city councillor, an MPP, and now is the leader of our opposition party, the NDP. And she is different because she's someone who listens to the everyday voter, to the everyday person. She's on their side. Her core values doesn't change, and that's making life more affordable for everyday Cambridge residents or Ontario residents. And that is also making small businesses have an environment in which they can prosper and thrive and make Ontario once again a have province. That's the difference between her and any past premier. It's a concern for workers, it's a concern for families, it's a concern for you and I.
Scott?
I hope you're going to ask the Liberal candidate about the Rae legacy, because I think that he's one of them now, and perhaps they should take some responsibility for actions that he took in government since they've made him their interim leader federally. I think that Andrea, having first been elected this century, not last century, was not a part of that government. We certainly did learn some things, but at the same time, there were tremendous advances made during that government, which we could talk about if we were here to talk about the 1990s. But we're here to talk about 2011.
Well, Jim, thank you very much. And anytime you have one of those astute questions, please call back in. I thought it was right on the mark. And it's interesting. We got the election coming up, and there'll be a lot of door knocking. There'll be a lot of people going to barbecues tonight with Rob Leone, those sorts of things. When we come back after the break here, I'm going to get into some of the activities that you and your fellow supporters will be doing in the next couple of weeks. We'll be back in a moment. Well, we're back again, and I'm Doug Craig. I'm in for Gary Doyle. Gary Doyle's on holiday somewhere, and we're hoping he's back next week. And I want to get into this whole thing now that we started off talking about a number of issues with regards to the NDP and how they're different, the Bob Rae days compared to today, Andrea Horwath. And we have Randy on the line, so get Randy to come on now, and a question for and an update, please. Randy?
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
We're doing great.
Good, thank you.
Actually, I have a few questions, but I know time is not really on my
Well,
side.
we haven't got a long list of callers yet, but go ahead, Randy. We'll work on it.
Well, the one very important question I have out of the two I wanted to ask, do you agree that the size of government has grown substantially under the Liberal government?
I think that there's a lot of waste in the system. And as New Democrats, we're very clear that there is waste. For instance, the $1 million a day that we spend on consultants in Ontario, that's money that could be going to frontline nurses or doctors or specialists, opening urgent care clinics in our communities. So there's definitely waste in the in government.
Okay, but I'm asking you about the size of government. Compared to the people that pay for it, are we over-governed is basically what I'm asking you.
I think that if there's waste, and if we're spending $1 million a day on consultants, that then would tell you that we have needless workers, right, in the system. And
so you will be changing the size of government, and if you're elected into power?
For sure, streamlining it, making it much more responsible to you and me, everyday taxpayers. That makes sense, absolutely.
Okay, and the second question I have, I'm originally from Northern Ontario, and they are very hard hit by the policies under the Liberal government, and unemployment is very high. Mm-hmm. What are you guys going to do differently?
You know, that's a great question, and Andrea Horvath, our leader, is very passionate about the Northern Ontarians and the job losses that have happened, for instance, with Metrolinx awarding the contract for trains to a Quebec firm, which then caused, I think, about 1,000 jobs that will now be lost in North Bay area. That's a shame, because the difference between their contract and the North Bay contract, the difference between the winning Quebec contract and the North Bay contract was only $2 million. Just for $2 million, we're shipping all that wealth outside of Ontario. So, as New Democrats, we have representatives in Northern Ontario. We are always on the side of Northern Ontarian residents, and making sure that we are championing their jobs and putting the emphasis on keeping those jobs locally in Northern Ontario is something that we will continue to strive for. Scott, did you have something to say?
Scott, go ahead, please.
Yes, well, it's no accident that the NDP is so strong in the north, and I think you're going to see a lot of northern seats turn orange in the upcoming campaign, as we did starting in the 2008 federal.
Absolutely.
And if part of that is a legacy of our previous leader, Howard Hampton, and the work he did on building the party there, but that's a commitment that Andrea Horvath has. She's spent a lot of time in Northern Ontario and recently released our Northern Platform. And I think we're the only party that has a specific platform for Northern Ontario. And I think that voters are going to recognize that at the polls.
Okay, well done. We got Al on the line. Al, go ahead. Question for Atinuke, please.
I really don't have a question. I guess starting with the past election and now this one, the Bob Rae thing keeps getting dragged in. And honestly, I'm really sick and tired of that boogeyman getting dragged out of the closet. First of all, I've never voted for Bob Rae, so it's not like I'm supporting him. I'm just sick and tired of hearing all the candidates going back to this. They keep talking about trying to get younger voters out. Do you realize that a lot of the younger voters weren't even born when Bob Rae was in power?
I think, yeah, we're aware of it. I can remember those years.
But I think what people forget, though, is we were in a recession. We also had interest rates second only to the interest rates of the late 70s, early 80s. I think along the line, everything gets muddled. All it was bad old Bob Rae. I think it's almost time to bury Bob Rae, the stories, and move on to this election, and never mind what's gone on in the past.
Well, I think
the past is important, but not 20 years ago.
I don't think we want to bury Bob Rae right now. He's a leader of the for a short time of the Liberals in Ottawa. So, and I understand what you're saying, where you're coming from with all of that. I think we're talking about the present. It's just that it does get brought up, and I want the candidates here to be able to make that contrast, and I think they're all quite correct. there's a difference between Tim Hudak and Mike Harris. There's a difference between Andrew Horvath, obviously, and Bob Ray. And I think that contrast is being made. Your comments are making that also. So thank you very much for calling. It's appreciated. So Atinuke, you've got the next couple of weeks. What's happening with your campaign? Are you going door to door? Where are you doing it? What interesting? Is there a barbecue that I should be aware of so I can tell people?
Well, we had our barbecue last Thursday.
No, I missed it.
Yes, you did.
Okay, you didn't give me you didn't give me an invitation. I just want to mention.
We'll
that.
make sure we give you one for the next one.
Okay, that's a promise.
Yes, a new Democrat promise.
A new Democrat.
I know.
You're not supposed to promise. You're only supposed to make commitments.
Yeah, we only promise fun things, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
We had a wonderful turnout. It was in Riverside Park, and just wonderful to see all the people from North Dumfries that came down.
Okay.
And also people from Cambridge that came out.
Was Scott there?
Scott was probably holding down the barbecue here in Kitchener.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he had his hands full. But coming up, we have been going door to door certainly since June, July, and coming into September, we'll continue that. We are hearing a lot from voters how affordability issues is prime on their mind. The underemployment in Cambridge, many people who have been laid off of work or who have had their work hours reduced since 2008. And, the economists are telling us that the recession is over. Yeah, really.
No, I would agree with you. There's concerns out there. As mayor, I understand those concerns. And, our focus at City Council is jobs, too. And, I'm talking across the board here.
And it's so important then that we have a representative provincially that is also adding to that, that's working with that move to get more jobs into Cambridge, as opposed to perhaps being silent on it. And so that's really that change that we wish to bring to Cambridge, that we will be bringing to Cambridge, a change that puts everyday workers first, a change that brings in more jobs, more green technology jobs, one that rewards small businesses that are creating jobs, as opposed to giving the tax cuts to large corporations that are just making tons of profit.
Okay, let me just be a little bit cynical here. And I read part of your platform. It says you're going to remove the HST from electricity, home heating, and gasoline. It's kind of a motherhood issue to do that, and all the parties seem to be, well, except for the Liberals, obviously, are going. I think the PCs are doing the same thing. You're going to remove all the HST, but where's the revenue on the other side of the balance sheet going to come from? If you take away that the monies that are coming in to support these different expenditures.
First of all, with the HST issue, we've been very successful on that, and McGuinty himself, even though he brought it in, quickly brought in the 10% rebate on electricity bills. And that was directly because the New Democrats since 2010 have been saying that tax is unfair. It should not be on the back of everyday consumers.
People are getting checks back.
That's right. And that's because of the success that we've had in really letting people know about the unfair tax that is the HST.
Well, it's interesting. My son, who doesn't live in the house anymore, keeps getting these checks from the Ontario government. I'm thinking, well, what about me? So who's getting the checks? Besides my son.
I think McGuinty can tell us that.
All right, okay.
But, really, in terms of balancing the books, what we want to do is make sure that we are rewarding job creators. We should not be giving across-the-board tax breaks, tax giveaways to corporations that are shipping their jobs overseas. We are giving targeted tax cuts to corporations creating jobs here locally. So the way we're balancing the HST cuts, taking them off of things that should not be taxed, like your gasoline, like your hydro, your home heating, is then making sure that we're putting it fairly on things that should be taxed, which is maybe the billions that corporations like banks and insurance companies are making.
Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I once heard someone say that the NDP had never met a tax it didn't like, and I thought that was a little unfair. And certainly in the HST,
politics are unfair.
we certainly met one that we didn't like, and it's important that people know that the HST can't be considered in isolation. What it represents is a massive tax shift away from corporations onto individuals. And that's what makes it so unfair. Taxing necessities like home heating is simply unfair, and there should not be consumption tax on things that people need.
Let me ask you a question, and I haven't raised this with Rob Leone. I just slipped by, but the cities are in a very difficult position with infrastructure. Very difficult position because the tax that they impose, which is the property tax as an example, is very visible, and a lot of the taxes that are imposed by provincial federal governments are somewhat invisible. People don't keep track of them. Everybody can tell you what your property tax bill is, but they can't tell you how much they spent in HST last week. How are you going to help cities?
I think cities are the backbone.
We're struggling.
Yes, absolutely. Infrastructure is struggling, the sewage system, the water systems. Cities are the backbone of Ontario. And Andrea Horwath, our leader, was just this past week or earlier this week at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario meeting, where she got a standing ovation because the plans that she set out for cities is one that's very practical and very doable. It's about reinvesting in our infrastructure, like our roads, our sewage, our water systems. And it's one that...
Is that an infrastructure plan that the Liberals now and the PCs are talking about? The same thing or what?
Well, I think it's really one that's coming from the members that were present themselves. It's really one that's coming from everyday city councillors saying that the tax system for cities needs to be one that puts back money in the pockets of cities, gives them greater say in how infrastructure needs will be handled, will be targeted, and will be resolved.
Scott, what do you think?
And one of the other things that she committed to at AMO this week was continuing with the promise to upload services to the provincial level that never should have been downloaded by the Harris government.
Well, that's quite correct, and I think we're all aware of that. And I'll come back to that after the break. I have Atinuke Bankole with us here, the NDP candidate for Cambridge, Scott Paitowski, Vice President of the Provincial NDP. And we'll get back to you right after the break. Well, it's good to be back here. We have, I want to go right to Ashley. Ashley, you have a question for Atinuke, please.
Doug, I'm actually live in Cambridge, not from there. And I have a question. This goes out to basically all the politicians. They all like to make lofty promises when there's an election. Where's the guarantee? Is there if we can't, we will?
All right,
that will end that phrase, or are they just making me more promises, trying to get my vote, and will do nothing to back it up when it's over?
We talked about this earlier with the Rob Leone, now with Atinuke. Go ahead, please.
We're not making any promises that we can't keep. With the NDP platform, we're very careful to make sure that we're making practical commitments to the future of Cambridge, to the future of Ontario. We're not making empty promises. The things that we have set forward are things that people are telling us they need to bring relief to their lives, to make affordable the cost of living. So they are solutions to everyday problems that people have, not election promises. I think Andrea Horwath, our leader, is someone who is hardworking, someone who has a lot of integrity, from her years on city council into being a member of provincial parliament. And she's someone who can be trusted. And that's why I'm running as a New Democrat.
Okay. Let's go to Doug in Cambridge. And Doug's already here, but go ahead, Doug, please. I think we've lost him. Oh, okay. We've lost Doug. Let's get back to what we were talking about, a number of things. But I'm going to mention Jack Layton. Your comments, Jack Layton.
He was an inspiration. I found so moving his dedication to people. He was an everyday person, right? He was someone who could relate to you and I, someone who had his heart in his work, in service, someone who people across from whichever political party they were part of really saw him as a genuine Canadian, and his death is a great loss to Canada.
Scott?
Well, I actually had a piece in yesterday's Record reflecting on my personal interactions with Jack, and I agree. It's just devastating. It completely wiped out my morning on Monday, hearing the news, and frankly, it's no accident that Jack Layton was a New Democrat. He embodied what the party stands for, and certainly we're not going to run this campaign on the ghost of Jack Layton, but we will continue to fight for his values, which is what in his final letter to Canadians he asked us to do. He said there will be people that that will try to tell you to give up the cause, and you ignore those people and you keep going.
No, I would agree. I think all the comments we've heard, seen in the newspaper, watched on TV, and from, of course, yourself and Rob Leone today have been right on the mark in terms of what a great man he was. And I think back at Jack Layton, and I grew up in Toronto initially. I've lived the most part of my life here in Cambridge. I've been in Hespeler 37 years, and I just got accepted a couple of years ago. But anyways, it's he was in politics in Toronto, which is a tough ground for anybody,
absolutely.
Battleground for anybody.
Yeah.
So he was ready for Parliament. He was ready to be a leader,
the smiling warrior.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? I think with a loss on a political side for mayors across Canada. He was president of AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and he believed in cities.
Yeah.
And we have lost that voice in the opposition to some extent with Jack Layton's passing. Cities are the creators of wealth. Cities are the institutions that produce all the taxes. And I have to come back to this. I don't think we're being supported. I think both provincially and federally there has to be more support for cities in terms of, besides a property tax, which people are really rebelling against, and user fees. That's all we have. And when you go back through the last 10, 15 years, you find that provincial and federal taxes have gone up considerably, and we're a lot less in terms of property tax, in terms of our ability to pay. Specifically, what do you think? What's the NDP going to do for cities? Scott, I'm going to ask you first because you ran for local politics. You have a sense, not that you didn't, but go ahead, please.
Well, I think that what Andrea said at AMO this week in terms of uploading, as I mentioned before the break, I think that's an important first step to get those services off the property tax base. Because, frankly, property taxes are not a progressive form of taxation.
They're regressive, absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay.
And certainly a senior who's been in her home for 47 years, she's not realized the increase in value of that home. She has actually, the home has appreciated in value, but she will not realize that until she sells the house. And certainly we don't want to force seniors to sell their home. So we need to get that off the property tax base. I think that some of the things that the McGuinty government did for Toronto, they should have offered to all municipalities the right to levy a vehicle registration tax or that kind of thing. Now, of course,
Rob Ford's giving it back, though.
He's giving it back. So I think we would see that as a mistake. I think that is probably a better way to raise revenue than on increasing the property taxes.
Well, let me add an update. Let me ask you the question then. As opposed to a transfer tax or whatever that was happening in Toronto, what about consumption taxes? Should cities have not raise a new tax, but have a portion of consumption tax? Maybe 1% of HST, I'm not asking them to raise it, or perhaps income tax, 1% of that goes out of our city, that goes out of this region. Is that a possibility? Would you think about that? I
think really all options are on the table. I think we need to make sure that we go back and we cut the waste in government. I go back to that $1 million a day that's spent needlessly on consultants.
But everybody's going to consult. Everybody says they're going to cut waste.
Yes, and we absolutely are committed to that because really it is a waste of yours and my dollars.
Well, I realize
and
that.
as we do that, it opens up the fact that the gas tax, for instance, part of it was supposed to go straight to assisting us in taking care of our roads, and yet much of it is going into just general revenue. So
but that's because municipalities are having a tough time, and I think we have to be aware of that. But you know what? We're coming down near the end of the show now. What I want to do is I want to give you an opportunity. Got about a minute and a half. What do you think? This campaign, where you're going, what's happening, and just sum it up for us.
Really, this campaign is about the concerns of Cambridge residents. It's a concern for the desire for a government that takes to heart their needs, their desires, that takes to heart their need for jobs, the need for proper housing, a government that really brings change and puts everyday people first. That's, I think, why I am a New Democrat. Also, to sum up, I think we have an opportunity in Cambridge to really bring in a strong voice for us at Queen's Park, not one that is routinely absent at Queen's Park and therefore means that we're losing services or not having the advocacy that we could be having. So Cambridge residents have a choice with this election to go forward and bring in positive change, or to go backwards to the 1990s and see service cuts and cuts in our hospital and see cuts to our schools. That's really the choice that we have, and I trust that they will make the right one, which is to choose a change that puts everyday people first.
Atinuke, Scott, I want to thank you for this afternoon, for coming in.
My pleasure.
And, you really expose yourself as people. You get the tough questions, and you're putting yourself out there. And I respect people that are out there. I think both of you have handled this very well. Rob Leone handled himself well, articulating the issues for people out there. And I've seen this kind of shift now. We're getting away from promises. We're getting more to advocacy and commitments. Thank you very much.
Thank
and we'll
you.
be back after the show, after the news break.